All right, all you live listeners of Successfully Chaotic. Today I have a super special guest. We're actually running a couple of minutes late because you all know I'm Wendy. I talk a lot. But he's also a fellow podcaster, super fun guy, loving the beard. I'm a beard person. We've actually done a show with a sponsor that has beard products, the Moist Collective. So if you've never heard of them, may want to check them out. It's beard products for men, and they're
Nice.
amazing. But that's I'm going to go ahead and throw the show over to Erik and let him introduce himself and a little bit about who he is.
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's truly an honor to be here. I love your show, by the way. People need to be listening to your show. Yeah, my name is Erik Allen. I'm the owner of erikallenmedia.com. And, I host two podcasts, the Top Rated MMA show and the Erik Allen show. And two different, completely separate audiences, where one is kind of a focus on up and coming MMA fighters. And the other show is where I talk with world changers, success minded people, and entrepreneurs like Ed Milet, Brad Lee, Tim Story, Jim the Rookie Morris, Dan Caldwell from Tap Out. And, I've been blessed to speak to some truly amazing people. And that show drops every single Friday. And so that's the where I'm at currently. But I really kind of, if we wanted to go into that area, I grew up in small house, small town, Washington State, and thought it was a typical household, right? Went to Sunday school, played Little League. My parents got divorced when I was 11. I'd never heard that word before. And it got chaotic after that. My mom got together with a guy who was very physically abusive. I ended up having to fight him off, literally hit him in the head with a cast iron pan twice when I was 13 years old. And then that got me kicked out of the house. And that sent me down a path of destruction for the next 10 years of my life, where I got into drugs and alcohol very early. And I was arrested at 18 for having a bong. And then by the time I'm 21, I was $28,000 in debt and had to file bankruptcy. And then worked in the for Universal Records for a year and lived a rock star lifestyle for about 2 years before getting laid off from the music business during the Napster days, if people remember that. And that kind of set me down another path, right, of just depression and things like that. And then I was working at Starbucks at night, and one girl walked in and said, "Hey, we got this cool college age event down in our church. Would you be interested in going?" And for me, I was a loner, didn't have any friends. I was depressed. And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." And went there, and I ended up knowing all these guys from this event. I'm like, "Whoa, dude, I haven't seen you in like 5-7 years." And I think God was planting a seed for me in that moment, because about a month later was Easter 2004. We went out and partied it up. And I woke up Easter morning surrounded by probably 15 guys in my buddy's basement. We were all, drunk. And, I was about 5 a.m. And I felt God in that moment go, "Hey, man, you're going down this path that's going to end your life real quick. So you need to make some changes, unless you just want to like end it." It was like this weird, crazy, conversation I was having. So I decided in that moment, I gave my life to Christ, and I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I called that girl up who invited me to that church event and got her voicemail and said, "Hey, happy Easter. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime." And a month later, we were dating. Now we've been married for almost 17 years.
That's amazing. And, I've heard a lot of stories of kind of overcoming, and a lot of those, there's the same kind of feeling to them of just the redemption. However, you believe in the redemption,
Yeah.
that's fine. But as far as like people that are listening, but a lot of them, some people call it a higher power, some people
Sure.
call it just divine calling, some people say God, but I really, it's the same undertone of that. If they just, felt this nudge, this pull,
Mm.
that there had to be something else, something different than how they were living life right now. And I mean, I love that, because I think there's a lot of people, no matter what walk of life that you're in, that you feel stuck, and maybe
Yeah.
it's not drugs, maybe it's not alcohol, maybe it's, relationships, or, a loss of a job, or loss of a loved one, or whatever the case may be. But you hit this moment where you feel like you just fall on your face, and, you are in that moment looking for something to grasp onto. And I have heard so many people talk about just that nudge and that pull of just, there's got to be something else, something different. And I love that you kind of made this your mission. And I think it's funny. I forgot that you were, I don't know why I forgot it, because they didn't air titled MMA. I was involved in MMA back in the day, a long time ago, but
Oh, nice.
um, it's that world. I, I'm curious, was you already involved in MMA before you kind of, I guess, had your redemption story, or was that something that came along after the fact? How did that kind of mix? Because I know that world.
Yeah, I've just always been a big fan.
Yeah.
Never fought myself. I grew up watching ninja movies. My dad would rent movies that didn't have any English. It was just ninja movies as a
Oh,
kid,
wow.
and we would watch WWF, and when it was called WWF. in wrestling, we'd go to live events, and my dad would like do Mike Tyson pay-per-views and stuff like that when I was a kid. And so always was a fan of combat sports. And it was in 2012, I was sitting around the house, like, man, I really want to get involved in this MMA world.
Yeah.
So I talked to my wife and I said, hey, let's start this clothing company. We started this clothing company called Top Rated MMA, and it took off really fast.
Awesome.
And then it went real quick, right? And we made a lot of business mistakes. We didn't put a business plan together. We bought a bunch of inventory that didn't sell. And I ended up donating probably 30 or 40 shirts to Hurricane Katrina victims at the time. And, it just like, it was what I was really passionate about. And then when it started to slow down, I actually got bored with it. I put an ad in Craigslist. I said, who wants to buy this company?
Yeah.
And this guy messaged me and said, hey, dude, I'll offer you a few grand for it. And in that conversation I had with this guy, I decided I wasn't ready to quit. So I spent the next year kind of just figuring out what I wanted to do. And that's when I launched the Top Rated MMA podcast in 2017. And so that's how I got into it. But, never been a fighter, but a huge fan, have so much respect for fighters who, step in the cage. I love that the professionalism that happens with MMA fighters. And, I just love talking with those up and coming MMA fighters.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think a lot of people that's listening, entrepreneurs and business owners, probably heard something in your story where you're like, it took off and all of a sudden it was like nothing. Because I think a lot of people, and I was thinking back to even a couple of businesses that I had in the past early on. I was like, this is it. This is the moment. This is right here. That's it. It was going so well, and then crash, burn. And like you said, I hadn't laid the foundation. I hadn't prepared for the inevitable fact that some things surge and then they just plummet and surge and plummet. And I mean, if you look at the stock market, that's how business is too. So, it takes a lot of that falling on your face for you to figure out kind of, oh, okay, this is kind of how business is. And you mentioned a business plan, make your business plan and plan for that ebb and flow. And I think that can actually be said just for life in general, but also for business. And I know before we went live, we were talking about how it's so crazy. It's already December. It's December 1st, guys. If you're watching this live, today's December 1st. If you're listening to this on the podcast later, I don't know what date it is, but it's December 1st today. So this year has just flown by. And, I'm planning now, and I'm sure you are too, within my business. We're not even talking about 2021 anymore. We're talking about Q1 of 2022 and, making all the plans for next year and all those things. And I know you mentioned when we were still in the back room, just about that you're passionate about time management and about morning routines and all those things. And I thought that'd be a great topic, since a lot of people, especially in the business space, are looking at that, ready for January, we're going to crush 2022,
Totally. Yeah. It's been a crazy year for me. I mean, 2021, I set a goal that I was going to be a guest on 100 podcasts. And so on top of releasing 100 of my own podcasts throughout the year. So this is my 111th interview I've given this year. And I've released an episode of each of my shows weekly this entire year. So mentally, I'm like at the end of the rope where I'm going, oh man, I'm almost there, right? I got another month, And so I'm actually going to take the whole month of January off from doing shows and podcasts, and just kind of get my thoughts back together and kind of figure out, all right, 2022, here's where we're going to kill it. And I'm going to work more on my content creation for the month of January, and then we're going to get right back into it. I'm still going to release shows. I'm not going to record or anything. But yeah, it's so important. I mean, as we do head into 2022, I'm thinking Q1, like what projects, what things can I be working on, right? And for me, it's a morning routine, has to be consistent, and I wake up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week. And I think what helps me get consistent with that is if I open my eyes, that's a win. I actually have a goal to open my eyes the next morning. So if I open my eyes, that's a win. I'm already like, yes, right? Yeah. And then I jump out of bed and I make my bed. There's 2 wins in 15 seconds. So I'm already stacking the wins. I'm building my momentum throughout the day immediately when I wake up. And then for me personally, I come up to the office, I've got a vision wall I created. So I've got, picture of my family. I've got picture of the property that I want. I've got quotes. I've got people that I want to meet, and I speak out loud to this, and I, turn on worship music, and I, sit down in prayer. And for me, prayer is about just being grateful for the things that I've been blessed with, thank you for health, and thank you for my wife and my kids, and, where we're at, and, financially. And that's a non-negotiable. That routine happens 7 days a week, 365 days a year, when I'm traveling or not. Even when I'm like on the road at a conference, something like that, I have photos of my vision wall, so that I can look at my phone and go, yep, this is exactly what I've got. And it's got my goals in front of me. And I think it's really important to say I am statements, or I'm in the process of accomplishing this, versus like I will be, right? Like I'm telling myself that I'm already in the process of doing that. And so for me, morning routine is huge.
And I think I love the I am statements because I think sometimes, we sit down to, and I like that you said vision wall, because you got a whole lot of thoughts going on in my brain. My husband's going to hate me, but that's okay. And that's fine. Because I do some vision boards, but you said vision wall, and all of a sudden my decorating brain just went crazy. So I'm going to blame you. I'll be like, well, Erik said that he has a vision wall. This is where I'm coming with this at. But
yeah,
anyway, yeah. I think a lot of times we think about these goals and we're making these plans, and a lot of people do vision boards. I actually do them at the end of the year, and we do them as a group. We sit down and do these big vision boards, and we dream and we plan for all these goals. But I like that you said I am, because even in the act of deciding to do something, that is starting the process. So adding that in there, that adds some accountability to it. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do this sometime and some place in the future. This is, I've decided to do this, and I am doing this starting today, and I love that.
Yeah. It's very important for me to say that and to look at my vision wall. Like I actually took half the office wall of my office, and that's what is my vision wall. So I, put everything up there, and people walk up there and like, man, what is on there? And, like look at the stuff. And, one of the funny things I have on there, people always crack up about is there's a cartoon and it says, if I can't pee off my front porch, my neighbors are too close. Well, It's because my goal is to have the property. Right. And so I look at that and I go, someday, right.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I think I love that. And I love, making that decision to plan your mornings out, I think is huge. And, for some people, it may not be 4 a.m. and maybe 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7, whatever. But I think the idea here is to look at your life, what works for you, your family, your goals, and make a plan to make it happen every day. And mine's similar. I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and my goal with that is to get up before my kids do, which doesn't always happen because I have a lot of early rising children, but they've also come to respect my time to say, okay, unless it's like a true emergency, this is mom's time. Mom gets up, I do the same thing, make my bed. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, you say you do it every morning. There's a few times that it's happened. It's like, I'll make my bed in a few minutes because I've got a kid, something's going on. And if it doesn't happen, like the day goes on, it's like noon, I go in there and make bed. My day is, and it sounds silly, but my day is complete crap. It's complete crap because I haven't kept, it's just one thing starts to unravel the entire day. And it seems like, well, that doesn't make a difference if you made your bed or you didn't make your bed the same time every day. But it does. It's that momentum. It's just checking those things, those small wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the morning routine also, it starts the night before. So before I go to bed, I actually have a Post-it that I write on there exactly what I have to do the next morning. I need to email this person. I need to pay this bill. I need to read 10 pages of my book, right? Craig Ballantyne wrote a book called The Perfect Day Formula. And he talks about this the night before. Do your to-do list. Because when you get up to your office, our tendency is to open up our phones and go to Facebook and Instagram, and we get lost in social media world. And so I try to avoid getting on my phone for the first half hour of the morning. I can just like get in and get focused. And then after that, I can maybe respond to some emails and things like that. But really that morning routine, it starts the night before. So write that to-do list before you go to bed.
I love that. I think for me, one of the things that I do is I make my, obviously like most people, yearly goals, quarterly goals, monthly, weekly, whatever. And then I do the same thing the night before. I look at my weekly goal because we all know we have other things that happen in life, kids, spouses, employees, things happen that kind of changes. And if you're not being proactive at looking at your list, that night before, and they're waiting till you get to the office or to your home office or whatever your, schedule is to do that, you have lost so much time, that you don't even realize. So I love that, you're kind of, laying that out there for people and baby steps. It doesn't have to be hard, right? We think
totally.
Time management and morning routines, and it's just this hard thing, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I think ease into it is best, right? Like if you're used to waking up at 9 a.m., don't jump to 4 a.m., right? Like ease into 15-minute increments. And
Stacy Price, if you're listening right now, she works with me. She read, I don't even know what it was, but it said something about you got to get up at, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5. She's not completely a morning person. Like she's not like a noon person, but she's not like a 4 or 5 a.m. person.
Yeah.
So she was consistently not meeting, and she'll be okay with me telling this, but she was consistently not getting up at that time. And finally I'm like, listen, I was like, why are you picking 5 a.m.? 5 a.m. is just what they picked. I mean, you can put, fill in 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., whatever works for your life. The idea is that you're making that routine.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people kind of get stuck in that. They see somebody else's, vision board or vision wall, like you said, or they see somebody else's routines, there's a saying that says, eat the meat and spit out the bones. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I was raised redneck, so we say redneck things like that. But eat the meat and spit out the bones. It's something that's said in my part of the country. But it's pretty much what that means is, you take the pieces that work for you and you kind of, utilize those pieces, and the stuff that doesn't work, you push it off. So if you're looking at somebody else's example of their routine or their business plan or their vision board, it doesn't mean you have to replicate it 100%. You take the idea and you fit it into your own life. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make and business owners make is, that they try to completely replicate what's going on when it doesn't really fit. It's like taking a square peg and shoving it into a round hole, right? It's not going to fit.
Exactly. Yeah.
So can you share with everybody, I know you obviously, first of all, that is a very ambitious, like 100 podcasts. I don't even know like that. I don't know that I can make that commitment. That's a lot of podcasts. Can you share this? What was the inspiration and I guess the why behind that? I'm really big on whys. I'm always like, probably, and if it's not my business, you'd be like, it's not your business, Maria, and that's fine. But I do ask why a lot. I'm like a 7-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, it's good though. It's so good. I mean, for me, I wanted to start getting on other podcasts. One, because I love talking with people. I love networking with people. And I saw that as an opportunity for me to just network and get to know other people that are podcasters. And in 2020, I set a goal that I was going to be on 50 podcasts and I only did 26. And I was like, seriously, that's all you got, And so when I got into 2021 or at the end of 2020, I said, you know what, we're going to do 100 this year. And so I just set this, I honestly had no idea. I used it as a stretch goal because I also realized that I'd be taking vacations and putting out 2 of my own shows each week. And how do I do that and record my own shows and things? And I do all the editing myself. So I get up at 4 a.m. to do that type of stuff. And so it was really a stretch goal for me. And I, like I said, this is my 111th for the year. I think I'm scheduled through 117. And, but it was really the reason that I wanted to do that was, one, connect with a lot of people, but also if you're a podcaster and you want to promote your show, what better way to do it than get on other podcasts and talk about your show?
Absolutely. Well, and I love that you said networking. Networking is, honestly, I have built every business that I've had. I have built from networking, and people are always like, how did you build your business so quickly? I'm like, I talk a lot. I mean, I do. I talk a lot. I mean, sometimes we're like, Maria, calm down. Talk a lot. Good. But it's like a network. People remember that. They, we know, we hear that saying all the time that people do business with who we know, like, and trust, right? Yep. And the best way to create that is by talking to people and getting to know people and networking. And, kind of the beauty of the podcasting world is it expands your horizons. I've spoken with people from all over the globe. And that's something that's kind of, if you think about a couple decades ago, that would have been unheard of, to be able to think about doing that. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of the podcasting world is just, that sense of belonging, that it creates this instant community that if you have 0 other things in common with them, you said that you have podcasting, it's instant community.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been fun for me. So since I started, I actually created a map on Google Maps and I pinpointed where every single one of my guests have been at. And so I've released over 350 episodes by now. So, it's fun to see that map continue to grow with all the pinpoints from across the world. And, it's just kind of a fun little self thing that I do.
So what was your inspiration for starting a podcast? Because I jokingly have dubbed myself the accidental podcaster, and people that listen to me know my story behind that. And it's 100% true. I knew nothing about podcasting, but, what was what was your drive to start your podcast?
So kind of at the tail end of Top Rated May, I was kind of like, what do I do with this? And so I decided I wanted to talk with fighters and say, how do I, with MMA fighters, why do you want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? That was my main question that I wanted to ask fighters was, why do you want to do this? And so that's where it started. But then in 2018, I came across a guy named Ed Milet online, and I was like, who's this guy? He's like speaking directly to me. This guy is amazing. And so I started taking notes on all of the shows. I went through and I watched every episode that he ever put out on YouTube. I was listening to every show. I got his book. I read his book several times, and I was like, man, this guy's awesome. And then in the end of 2018, I decided I wanted to start my own entrepreneurship podcast. It used to be called The Bearded Biz. My wife being the smart one said, hey, it sounds like it's kind of more of a beard show, so we should probably change it. So I changed the name to Erik Allen. And in 2019, Ed Milet did the Max Out Challenge, not the daily challenge, but a Max Out Challenge where he basically said, hey, submit a 1-minute story to me via Instagram and tell me what you're passionate about. What drives you to be successful? And so I did that. And then out of his 1,000,000 followers, I got picked and I won a phone call with Ed. And that call changed my life forever. Basically, from there, I was able to record that show. Prior to that, I had Sean Whalen on my show, and then I had some other names. But Ed Milet was like my 12th episode that I released. And then
That's
from there, it just kind of built up from Ed Milet to, Bradley and Bedros Koulian, all those guys. And the same question that I ask fighters, why do you want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? I ask that same question for entrepreneurs. Why do we want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? Hopefully not physically, but as entrepreneurs and successful people, we go through failures, we go bankrupt, we try stuff all the time, but we keep going. What is it that gives us that drive? Why do we keep going? So that's a question I love to ask. And so that's how my podcast started was, I just wanted to understand why people wanted to get punched in the face, and same with entrepreneurs.
Love it. Love it. That's your 7-year-old inside asking why. So I think we have a lot of comment on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. Yeah. I mean, and then you're so right. Like entrepreneurship, like people that come that are new entrepreneurs, I end up, I teach a few classes, I told you that. And so I get a whole lot of aspiring entrepreneurs that come to my class. There's one that I teach that's called How to Start a Business with No Working Capital. And for that one, I get a whole lot of aspiring, like people that, think they have that entrepreneurial spirit and they're coming to the class to find out how to make it happen because maybe they don't have, any capital, obviously, to start it.
Yeah.
And it's funny, they're wanting to hear this easy journey, like, oh, I made it to this, and then this happened. It was so glorious. It was like, but they're wanting this like, whoa story, right?
Totally.
And I'm that person that I just tell like it is, right? It's like, oh, it's hard. You're gonna fall on your face a lot. You're going to cry. Well, for me, I would sit and cry to my husband and be like, I'm done. I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. This is terrible.
Totally.
And then the next morning, I get up and do it because it is. You mentioned drive. It is. It's this pull. It's this drive. And there's nothing wrong if you don't have it. Some people, want to be an entrepreneur, and some people don't. And it's not like a good or bad thing. It's just either there or it's not. And once you've kind of been through that, I'm sure you can see it in people and feel it in people. And it's hard to really pinpoint completely why, other than you hear that same story of, at the beginning, you don't know why. You just have this pull. You feel this almost like divine intervention that you have this purpose that you're supposed to unfold.
Yep.
And, it's crazy. Now, not all of my businesses have been purpose driven. There's some of my businesses, and I always tell people that's a warning light. If you start a business for the sole purpose of just the dollars, you might as well quit right now.
Totally. For sure.
Not even started.
For sure.
It's so funny because I've had people, that's one of the questions I ask. I'm like, why do you want to start that business? And they're like, well, I just want to make a lot of money. I'm like, it's not for you. It's not, because that is a long-term goal, maybe, right? That's a long-term, might happen. And they don't realize like for the first couple of years that you're paying the business money just to be able to keep the business going. So you could go over here and work 9 hours a week to keep the business going. And, they don't realize that's part of the process.
It's absolutely insane. I mean, I still work a full-time job and on top of doing all this stuff. So, for me, I never even thought about monetizing my show or anything like that. I did podcasting because I love podcasting. I love talking with people. Yeah. I started my podcast in 2017. I didn't start monetizing my show at all until 2021. And then at that point it was like, okay, now I can do that, but I don't want my show to be overly like business sponsored and stuff like that. I do have some local sponsors, but, that's just one way that you can monetize your podcast. But, I never thought about it. I did podcasting because I loved it. And I think if anyone's trying to get into podcasting, they should do it because they love it. Don't expect to be the next Joe Rogan, and also expect that you're going to suck quite a bit before you start getting good.
Yeah. And I don't even know, I get scolded all the time because I do not listen to my podcast back. I've heard my accent. I've heard myself talk. I don't like listening to myself talk. I mean, I realize it's a part of who I am, but I don't need to hear it. And
sure.
Props to you for editing your own podcast. I don't. I pay somebody to do it. It's well worth the dollars to me to not have to listen to myself talk and sit there and cringe, because I know myself. It would never go out and be like, I'm not putting this out. This is not happening.
Totally.
But if it's out of sight, out of mind, it's done. Whatever's happened. I can be happy with it. So.
Yep.
But and I think that goes back to also, again, figuring out like what works for you, because I don't know that there's a right or wrong. And I know if you get in a lot of the podcasting groups, some people tell you that you're very, very wrong. But, I think you mentioned, the desire to just want to do it. And I think that's the core, the purpose, the why, to feel like you're just doing it because you love it and not for any major, especially financial goal on it, because especially with podcasting, there are different ways to monetize. I decided not to do ads. We've done some kind of behind the scenes sponsors where I'll kind of mention them or something like that. But I'm the same way. Like I didn't want, they're already, again, having to listen to my voice. They don't need to listen to ads in between all that too. So I think for me, that's what worked for me. And I use my show more for marketing and for networking. Mm-hmm. And so my way of monetizing is actually kind of after the fact. People will come to me after the fact for consulting, for coaching, to help them start their, so that there's different ways of monetizing your podcast. And that's kind of one of the ways. Ads is one, sponsorship is one. Another is just by using it for your own marketing purposes to kind of network. And I think, there's no right or wrong as far as that goes. As far as, kind of backtracking back to talking about, just like routines and stuff like that. I'm sure with, working full time, because I didn't even know that you worked full time as well. That's adding a whole nother layer of awesome sauce to that. But with working full time and having a family and a spouse, I mean, I'm a wife. I know how needy I am. So I don't, I'm not going to get in trouble in here. So we'll just stop that there. But like, how do you manage your time balancing between that and to make such a huge goal of being on 100 podcasts and doing all the editing yourself? Like, how does that work? And I know you kind of started out by telling us about your morning routine, but what are some other, I guess, tricks and tips that you picked up along the way?
I think for me, it's time blocking. So I know that when I get up at 4 o'clock, I'm going to get to my office by about 4:30 to 4:45. And I got from 4:30 to 6:30 to get stuff done. So I know that whatever I'm heading into the day with, that's my time block that I have to attack it with. And at 6:30, I go down, I make breakfast for my kids, I make their lunch, I get everything going, I put the dishes away. And then at 7-ish, 7:15, well, actually probably 7:30, 7:45-ish, I come up here and I do a little bit more work. And then 8 o'clock, I start my full-time gig on this other computer over here. And I do that till 5 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, that's when I shut everything down. I literally say, nope, not doing no more social media. Now, I'm not perfect with this, but I definitely try to acknowledge it. But I try to shut down the phone at 5 o'clock because I know that if I get up early, I'm not eating into that family time. So at 5 o'clock, I'm shutting it all down because from 5 to 8:30, 5 to 9 o'clock, that's family time. I'm not going to deal with any of the work or social media or any of that stuff. I'm really going to try to focus on that. So my time block really being that early morning and then my full-time gig. And then the evening is all for family.
I love that. I mean, mine's a little different. Mine is, it depends on the day because I'm juggling a whole lot of different things. But I love that you make specific time blocks for specific things. And also, I mean, you've got your boundaries set in stone. And like you said, there are emergencies that come along, I'm sure, that could change, what goes on in the evening times or whatever. But the key is to have those boundaries. And I think one of my biggest mistakes, which I've had a lot of them, but one of my biggest mistakes early on in my own business ownership journey is I thought I had to be available like 24/7. Like 24/7. My clients call it, I was there. I don't care if it's 1 a.m. I'm somehow answering them. But here's the thing is you're setting that precedence. And I can guarantee you, even if you're okay with it short term at the very beginning, you are not going to be okay with it long term. So it's better off to figure out what your boundaries are and stick them in stone. And I thought I had to be that. I thought, well, if I'm going to be successful at this, I have to be available. I just have to be. I have to be. And that is exhausting. And it was, affecting my own sanity. It was affecting my family, and it was kind of one of those things where I was constantly feeling guilty, which, I mean, as parents, we tend to feel guilty all the time. If we're doing this, we feel like we should be doing that, vice versa. But it was even worse because I had no boundaries. So I think that is a huge tip for people that are listening. Look at your life and actually be realistic on, what time you want to put into it. Because, if you have other responsibilities or, a spouse or children, it's not realistic to plan every waking hour, working on your business. And for me, I would make my to-do list. I don't know if you ever made this mistake, but I'm an overachiever, especially in my mind. So I would make my to-do list. It is hilarious to kind of look back because I have some of them still. I don't even know that a team of 10 people could get done what I had on my to-do list for one day. And I have 7 kids and I have several businesses and I have all these things. And I like, would make this to-do list that I gave myself. And then when I didn't get it done, which couldn't happen, I would mentally beat myself up all day long. So it was just like this ongoing roller coaster of disaster. And, time blocking, I think, is a huge thing for, being able to get yourself out of that. Like, do you use a scheduling app? Like, how is it, or you just kind of like write it down? What is your kind of tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, my to-do list is on a Post-it note. I just bought a
Okay.
bunch of
Yeah.
Post-its and I use the Post-it note for my scheduling in regards to like shows that I'm on and my podcast schedule, and kind of I use Asana. I love Asana.
I like Asana, yeah.
And so I use that for, hey, here's my upcoming shows. Here's the shows that need to be edited. And then I just kind of move them down as they are completed and things like that. So those are my two things. I'm big on calendar. So, Google Calendar is big for me. If it's not on my calendar, then I will probably miss it. I probably will just get busy and forget about it. And I think short-term memory loss, like if it's not written down or if it's not in front of me, I'm totally not going to remember about it. But yeah, so I'm big on just easy stuff, right? Just a Post-it note, Asana free, calendar free. Like I love the free stuff, right?
Free is always good. I love Post-it notes too. I have like a thing for Post-it notes, and I have a big in my office. I'm in my studio right now, but in my office I have a big whiteboard, and I kind of do my own version of like Kanban. Do you know what Kanban is? Kanban, like it's kind of like project management board.
Okay.
So I kind of do my own version of that, and so I have different color Post-it notes mean different color things.
Yeah.
And so I use Post-it notes a lot for that kind of stuff. And
Nice.
I love Post-it notes, but I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Figure out what works for you. For some people, they're going to want to be 100% digital. I'm kind of a hybrid. I like digital. I want access to digital, but I still love my paper. I love like having the paper.
Yeah. I
want a piece of paper. I want to stick it on my wall. I want to be able to, see it in front of my face. So, I think those are some really great tips. When you're doing your time blocking, do you ever utilize batching? And by batching, I mean kind of doing the same, like if you're doing emails, you're doing all emails, or, there's no right or wrong. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I think for me, the first thing that I do when I get up and kind of get done with the prayer is first thing for me is I'm responding to emails that came in through the night. And for me, I don't to have a ton. It's more like, hey, respond to these 2-3 emails. But then my next on my list is really that, like, okay, reach out to potential guests or start working on the show. And those are my two big things in the morning. Sometimes it's like if I get a job from one of my Fiverr, customers or something like that, hey, I need to go record this video for them, right? So I might do that in the morning. That's kind of an occasional, but those non-negotiables really is that order is like emails and then reach out to potential guests and then start editing in shows and get it done for the week.
That's awesome. So you mentioned Fiverr. Is that something you advertise out that you do?
It's not really. It's kind of funny. I just have it on there. Yeah. It's I'm just on there to do like I do product videos for brands. So a lot of brands like beard companies or right now there's a gun holster company that sent me a couple holsters that they want me to do videos for them. Right. And so I work with brands and I do 30-second, 1 minute, 2 minute videos, or how-to videos, unboxing, stuff like that. And it's always fun. And I started doing voiceover this year. And so that's been fun to do as well.
That's awesome. It's funny. Fiverr wasn't in existence when I first kind of went out on my own, but it's actually called Upwork now. But at the time it was called Odesk. And it was a freelancer community. Yeah. And I can remember first starting out when I left my job at the very beginning, like when you first leave your job, for people that listen here, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this. When you first leave your job, there's a moment of like freedom. You're like, I'm free. And so you realize, well, I have no direct deposits coming in anymore.
Totally.
I have no freedom. Turns into like panic, right? So then it's like you start out like, well, I started out anyway, super arrogant about it. Well, I'm going to make all this money. It's going to be so good because I can do stuff. I can do stuff. And it went from that to turn it into, oh yeah, draw a logo. Well, I've never done it before, but I will make you a sweet deal for the first time ever. Yeah. And I was pretty much trying anything, but it sounds terrible, like trying all these things for like pretty much no money. But I gained so much knowledge during that time because somebody would take a chance on me that I'm like, I would be upfront and honest. I've never done this before, but I am a go-getter. I will figure out how. And I would watch videos. I took little certification courses to try to figure out how to do it. I gained so much knowledge, during that time that at the time I was in panic mode. But looking back, that was such a blessing. And I think that's kind of the thing with those times in life, like in the moment, no matter what the messiness is, like we were talking about when we first went on the show,
Yeah.
no matter what that is, you look back a lot of times, you can see the blessings in it. You can see the why in it. And I think that is such a huge thing, for people to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm big on trying things. So, I have a bunch of Fiverr gigs. Some of them are real basic, like, hey, you want to advertise your book on my website? Cool. I'll charge you this much money, right?
Yeah.
I also do laser engraving. So I sell
Oh,
laser engraved like home decor stuff, right? So I just throw that on there. I'm also on Upwork. So I do a lot of that stuff. And
yeah,
anytime that I can get an extra stream of income, I'm all about it. Right. So just
absolutely.
throwing it out there. And then I love to just, do all that stuff. And it helps bring in some extra cash money. And I just put it right back into my business of podcasting and marketing and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Well, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize just the benefit of having those side hustles, as they're called. And I know I mentioned early on that I teach a class called Mastering Your Side Hustle, and you will not believe how many people, like, it's always been a class that was kind of like, there was people that came. COVID has exploded that class,
Totally.
exploded that class. And I think it's because, and it's just so, I don't know, it seems odd to me. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So when you don't grow up with a lot of money, you're resourceful. You are so resourceful, and you can figure out how to make a buck, right? You can figure out how to make a buck. You can figure out how to do all kinds of stuff, make a buck, when you don't have any other way to do anything, right?
Yep.
So to me, that's always just been common knowledge. But it's funny, the way you just spoke, it seems like you're very much that same mentality of, oh, I can make a buck doing this, I can make a buck doing this, And I think that is so huge for people to think about because, when we go to a financial advisor to kind of take care of our portfolio, they diversify our portfolio, right? Mm-hmm. So they're diversifying, our money, but nobody thinks about diversifying their income. Or they didn't. And now that's starting to be kind of on the forefront. Oh, well, I need these multiple streams of income. And to me, that was like an insurance policy. It was like, I was terrified to have just one stream of income because, the what ifs kept me up at night. Like I said, I grew up with nothing. So, is that something that it's just something that you just always have naturally done? Or is it something that's come from, I know you mentioned that you were from, a broken home and a whole lot of, do you think that was something that kind of came from that, just the insurance policy type of mentality, or what do you think that is from?
Yeah, for me, it started really early. I was always a fan of making money. As a kid, I would go and sell baseball cards and trade baseball cards, and I would go and buy Nolan Ryan stuff. He's my favorite player, and I still own all of my Nolan Ryan cards. But, when I was 10 years old, I started mowing lawns. I did that for 2 summers, and I had 15 clients on both summers. And so I was making a couple $100, a month and just being 10 years old. And I literally, people think it's a joke, but I literally had to push a lawnmower about a mile one way uphill to get to my furthest clients, and
your kids like, yeah, right. I don't know how old your kids are, but
yeah, 11 and 8, they're like, really? Come on. He lived at the top of the hill. The only way I could get there was to push up the lawnmower. And so that's how I did that. But yeah, I started pretty early. I always was trying to do side hustles, and, I did some network marketing stuff in my early 20s and things like that. But now I think for me, it's about having that kind of life, that insurance, right? I know that I work for somebody and I work for a great company and it's a startup and anything can happen. I'm also understanding that I'm just an employee. I'm just a number to my employer. So I could be replaced tomorrow if I wanted to, or if they wanted to replace me tomorrow, they could. So I need to have that backup for income or anything like that. So if something was to happen where the boss man's like, dude, we're done, we're shutting everything down, or we don't like you anymore, so you're just gone, I would feel comfortable going, okay, I've got these incomes already kind of in place. Now I just need to kick it up a notch and then we can start increasing that a little bit.
Absolutely. That's always been my thing. It's like, before COVID, I had all these little things going on. People are like, you're crazy. Why do you do so many things? I'm like, to me, that was like my safety net. That, like you said, if something happened, all right, these are already simmering over here, so just turn up the heat. You don't start from scratch at that point. You've already got something there.
Right.
That I always kept. Well, my wellness company, for example, I've always kept, even when I'm not really working it, 1 or 2 clients. I've always kept them there just to kind of keep it going a little bit. Yeah. But there's been times in the past where I've had to completely pivot, and that was my primary thing. And, I think for people that are out there right now that are thinking about this entrepreneurship journey, sometimes, there's a time and place to kind of focus and hyper focus and get things done. But I think we hear that so much that we forget that it's okay to have these side hustles. I think, they don't realize that when people are saying, hyper focus and focus, it's that moment, that day, that week, whatever it is. That doesn't mean you can't have your thing simmering over on the side.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So can you tell everybody, I know we've been chatting for a long time at this point, but
Yeah.
can you tell everybody, first of all, where to find your shows? And you mentioned your website, just kind of where to find all the things, Erik.
Yeah, erikallenmedia.com. It's ErikAllen and then media.com. That's my website. You can find all my podcasts on there, my blog. You can hire me for speaking or laser engraving or content creation, whatever you need. I'm on there. I'm big on Instagram, so love to be able to connect with people on Instagram. So feel free to shoot me a message, or I respond to every comment and every DM that comes my way. I just love connecting with people. And so that's probably the main places that you can see my stuff. Also the YouTube channel, it's just Erik Allen Media on there, and we continue to bring on awesome guests and continue to try to be funny on some videos, and try to bring on some product videos that can hopefully help other people when they're trying to get through, maybe do I buy this product or not. And so that's what we try to do.
That's awesome. So do you have any like mega goals for 2022? I know your goal was like 100 podcasts for 2021. Do you have any goals that you've already set in stone
I
for
do have a
2022?
goal of walking away from my full-time job by June of 2022.
That seems like a good goal.
Yeah,
I'm rooting for you.
that's the plan. So, I'm working with some good folks, some good buddies of mine that have some really huge things in play that are going to be happening early 2022, and so I'm feeling like I'm feeling pretty good about it for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm rooting for you. And if there's anything that I can do to help out, feel free to reach out. I can give you a long list of things not to do when you walk away from your full-time job. So you can at least hop, skip, and jump over those.
Yeah,
I've already
yeah,
done those. I've already made those mistakes.
for sure.
You'll be like, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Trust me.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's been a blast having you on here, and I really appreciate it. And if you're listening on the podcast, you will find the links to all the things, Erik's, in the show notes. And for people that are watching live, we'll be back. Actually, we'll be back tomorrow because we typically go live. This was a surprise live show on Wednesday. So we'll be live again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time for another episode. And again, it's been a blast having you on, and thanks so much.
Oh, such an honor. Thank you